I felt
You
like
want
you were
to
going to
talk
say
about
something.
blowjobs
Dr.
with
Dom.
barriers when we get back?
Sorry.
I want to go into the whole eroticizing the barriers now.
Okay, I can do that.
That should be a pretty smooth segue from Zika virus. So
I think. Well, that's why I went to commercial. There is no good segue.
Welcome to the Swingset. Climb on up. There is always a swing available. On Life on the Swingset, the podcast, we explore ethically non-monogamous relationships, the pleasures and passions, the promise and pitfalls. We discuss all aspects of ethical non-monogamy in a fun, open, and welcoming fashion, with a gleam in our eye, a bounce in our step, our hands down your pants. Ooh, sorry, got ahead of myself. We may be biased. In fact, we most certainly are. But we don't sugarcoat, and each of us speaks honestly and earnestly about our thoughts, ideas, and experiences throughout our very own lives on the swing set. Thanks for swinging by.
As a well-known hypochondriac and germophobe who just as soon wrap his entire body in the Titan Full Body Condoms from the Naked Gun if only they sold them at the Lucky Bloke, it's no surprise that I think a lot about eroticizing safer sex. Thinking about it, talking about it, trying really hard to do it. On our 2015 Desire trip, I sat next to the doctor. No, not that doctor, though I did feel an urge to let this sexy man take me on adventures. He, like me, knew too much about STIs and often scared himself silly. And he's with us tonight for Life on the Swingset, the podcast. I'm Cooper, and tonight I have with me...
Hey everybody, it's Ginger.
Hey, it's Dylan Thomas.
And this is Shira B. Katz.
Holy crap.
It happened!
No, it's holy shit that Shirley Cast, not holy crap. Come on. Cooper, up your game.
I at least get an expletive.
And we have the doctor with us tonight. So please tweet along as you listen to our episode with hashtag SSPodcast. You can find us all on Twitter at Cooper S. Beckett, at Ginger N. the Prof, at Dylan the Thomas, and at Shira B. Katz. Doctor, would you like us to put your Twitter name up here?
Sure, and it's at Sexy Pixie.
Which always does throw me for a loop
now I know who
when
you are.
you DM me. Sexy Pixie.
Clearly you can hear the pixie in my voice.
I
Right?
can. If you like what we're doing here and want to help us keep doing it, you can support us by buying a shirt or other merchandise at lifeontheswingset.com/support. Shit, I changed that. If you like what we're doing here and want to help us keep doing it, you can sign up on our Patreon page to help support us by throwing a few bucks every time we release an episode, or set a monthly total at lifeontheswingset.com/support. Welcome, Doctor, and welcome back, Shira B. Katz.
Good evening.
Thank you.
So, we are here to talk about safer sex. But really, this is just an excuse for me to completely freak out about STIs.
Coop, I actually picture you sitting right now with your keyboard draped in saran wrap. You're wearing gloves. They're kind of in the I'm about to do surgery position.
Hands up, I had them put on by someone else.
Exactly. You're wearing a surgical mask, and we are way not by you. We are actually all in separate places as we do this, but you're just that safe.
I am. That's how I roll.
Absolutely.
So it's not a defense mechanism. Gotcha.
But the doctor's here to help us.
So it's almost like sitting at the edge of the hot tub and talking about how many days into the Desire trip can people start to become concerned about their STIs.
Well, I start the trip concerned. I put on a condom when I get off the plane, just to be safe. No, it was really nice sitting next to you, and you sort of let me in on the little secret that you're a doctor.
Every once in a while I let it out of the bag, yes?
Well, I can understand maybe not wanting to be the doctor in Desire, because you're not only going to get the fun STI questions, you'll get the, can you look at this? Is this an ingrown hair or is this herpes? And then you'll get the, can you look at my foot? I think I stepped on something.
I think it's funny that you assume everybody else was going to do that and it wasn't just you.
Well, actually, it's a lot of fun. You get to play doctor while you're there. So I try to use it to my advantage when I can.
But when you play doctor, do you really want to be the doctor?
Only as a hobby, of course.
Of course.
I have a very different reaction to doctors than you do, Cooper. Very, very different.
Well, tell me about that, Shira.
Well, it's totally an aphrodisiac. It's clearly an intelligent person who's had to prove it to multiple humans over and over again.
Oh, no, I
They have to
love
be in good
doctors. I was
standing.
really excited when he told me he was a doctor, and then we got
power.
to geek out about STIs for a long time.
See, I think Shira's point is that there's
That she's really attracted to doctors. I get it. So is Ginger.
It's hot.
So, Shira, do I hear the doctor fetish in there? Is that what I hear?
You know, I had a neurologist I was visiting a little bit last year, and I totally got the hots for him. It was bad. It was really bad.
I'm guessing he didn't mind.
He didn't mind, but you know, some of those tests they do in the office could be a little bit painful. And when you already have the hots for your doctor, you know, you kind of just slip into that completely inappropriate place a little bit. I kept it to myself, though.
So subspace is not cool when you're in the doctor's office? Is that what you're saying?
I don't think so. It definitely didn't feel right.
But wouldn't that be nice? Then you don't even have to think about it. You're just there. I love subspace because you're just there.
tell me what you want me to do.
Now I'm really blushing. Holy fuck. Okay. We were talking about something.
This is fun. Ginger, you rarely get this flustered.
Well, okay. I want to make the case for a doctor that's willing to kind of joke around with all the stupid memes that people, yell out and scream out about doctors, because doctors are scary to a lot of people. And the way that a lot of doctors communicate with people is not exactly accessible. And so somebody that's willing to roll with the punches is outstanding, because they're not just doing the work of one doctor, they're doing the work of many, because they're making it possible for people to just go to their doctors understanding that they're real people, and they have real stuff to say that doesn't necessarily involve everything being scary. So thanks for rolling with us, and thanks for not being the parent in the room, because we like to be kids when we talk to each other.
Oh, it's far hard for me to pay the parent.
Well, and to riff off of that, Dylan, to get a bit serious here, I am curious to hear the doctor's perception of, living in a mainstream world where, you have a practice, you see people, and you also are versed in the world of the swinger, of the lifestyle, of, different sex positive communities. And I'm curious, just in the big picture, if there are broad brushstrokes of differences that you might be able to share. Because, my question stems from Coop's hypochondria, in the sense of we're all sexually active people, but we're not the only sexually active people in the world. People have sex other than non-monogamous people. So I'm curious what it looks like when you're ethically non-monogamous versus when you're not ethically non-monogamous, when you're there with your doctor.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, being on the doctor side, I think that being ethically non-monogamous and being open is a really great gift for me, because I'm able to look at people in a much different way and have an open mind about what they have to say, which I think is really important, to be comfortable with who you're going to see so that you can speak to them about what is important to you. It's the best for the doctor-patient relationship. It's best for me as the clinician. It's also great for a patient. But I think really both sides being open and being able to have that dialogue is hugely important, and that's what this whole lifestyle has really brought to me as an individual. Whether I share that or not at the time, of course, is a different story. But the reality is, it helps me, and it really makes me more whole in the way I can help treat people.
I imagine it's much easier to get an HSV 1 and 2 test from you than it is to get from some of the doctors I've had.
Quite. You can get a lot more, much easier through our group. Yeah.
It's funny, because I have a primary doctor, and I wound up starting to see his nurse practitioner because she was more flexible than he was about giving me the tests I asked for, and then I randomly got assigned to this nurse practitioner who looks like she's 25. And she gives me absolutely everything I ask for and will test for anything and has not flinched with a thing I've told her. It's like I just had to work my way down the age bracket to people who actually aren't going to judge me.
Sure. No, that's a great point. And actually, I mean, let's face it, on our end too, we need healthcare. So we talk to other people. And normally if we're going to get medical care, we can talk to a colleague. Well, in this lifestyle, if we're talking about certain things, obviously going to our own colleagues is difficult. So I've experienced exactly what you have, and having to select just that right person that's able to deal with the information in a way that makes you feel good about yourself and also gets you great health care is really a struggle sometimes. So when you find that right person, super important to know that you're in the right place.
It doesn't hurt that she's super cute.
Being hot helps.
Yeah, really cute. So what do you think it is? Because my doctor pitched me that everybody probably has HSV, so why test for it? And it's like, because I'm non-monogamous. And he's like, still, you probably have it. Everybody probably has it, so why test for it? Do you think there is actually anything to that rationale?
Well, the antibody is always going to show up, and let's just be clear. So there's HSV1, right, which is the oral form generally, and HSV2, that is the genital form, and that's generally because you can have cross-pollination of either one of those. But essentially, once your titer is positive, it will always be positive. So if you know that you've been positive in the past, you will remain positive moving forward. But if you haven't been positive in the past, then you absolutely should continue definitely to get tested, because you could become positive at some point, and it's good for you to know.
I also wound up with a false positive, which was a fun 6 months.
Ooh, not a fun time, right?
No. But then a negative again. I mean, and what I really like to put out is that HSV 1 and 2 isn't a big deal at all, and most people probably have HSV 1. But that's why I started using oral barriers. And, Shira B. Katz tried to convince me to do this at the beginning of her tenure on the podcast. And I was all, swingers don't do that.
It's true. It's true. And it's really safe, except for when the condom on the penis gets kind of like stuck behind your uvula and you start choking.
Oh, God.
That's the
Oh, that's no good.
No,
that's not a good
that's
time.
Only happened. That's only
No.
happened like
That hasn't happened, Shira B? That sounded very
No,
specific.
it's for sure happened. But, you could choke on a goddamn corn chip. Are you going to stop eating corn chips? You probably should. Corn's bad for you. That's a bad example. But you know what I mean?
It was a gluten-free Rice Crisp.
There you go. I actually took so I've had all sorts of different relationships things happen recently that kind of landed me in a place that I found myself pretty single, like profoundly single for a poly girl anyways. Like I'm profoundly single. And so I've been dating a little bit, and I have found myself revisiting the blowjobs with barriers thing. And I really still love it, but I find that like I'm like, man, I have always been like the most uptight about this sort of thing. Maybe I should like chill out a little bit. And so I don't know, I still think about that sometimes. Maybe I should be a little bit more, transmission risks being at what they are. It's supposed to be lower, right?
It's incredibly minimal. And while I was at Desire, I had that realization that I probably play the safest of the entire resort.
Precisely.
Which is a weird feeling that makes me feel like maybe I could dial that back a little bit.
At least occasionally, right?
Yeah.
Just like fucking let loose a little once in a while.
And that's when you get antibiotic-resistant gonorrhea of the throat.
Oh, know. That's why I'm still thinking about it.
I still, I still make the fierce case that the safer you play, not just in general, but like for yourself, for your own comfort, the safer that you can play with multiple people. And I admit that that's an easier sell to non-monogamous folks than it is to anybody else, unless they're, let's say, profoundly single and monogamous and doing the serial monogamy thing. But I don't see why I don't feel like that's a point of shame, because you can just slip stuff off, put new stuff on, and then get right to it. And honestly, if you're doing what you want to do, and it sounds like, Cooper, you're doing what you want to do,
I am.
You're getting all the advantages of your safer sex practices, and you just feel a little bit of weird, shamey stuff, and I think you're getting more benefit than you are negative on it.
It's just, I think it's the same thing Shira was talking about. It sounds like a little bit of wanderlust away from your safer sex practices, Shira.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's a little bit of wanderlust. It's also like a little bit of missing cock and like the taste of cum. Like, honestly, it's, I'm gonna admit it. I did choose to have my first unwrapped cock for the first time in like 4 years recently.
Sure,
like
I am clutching my pearls.
It was like goddamn magic. I tell you what, it was so good that I was so blissed out. That was one of the nicest blowjobs, and I love all the blowjobs I give, but like that was one of the nicest blowjobs I've given in a long time.
I similarly miss the taste of pussy.
Me too,
quite a bit.
All the time.
And I say that because like my wife just doesn't necessarily like to be eaten out too much. So it's like, but literally your only
outlet.
My only outlet.
Your only input. Inlet. Sorry, your only input.
There you go. Yeah, my only source is not necessarily often accessible, and so I keep occasionally trying to figure out ways to still do it and jive with everything else, and it just kind of comes down to like I had an offer fairly recently, and I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And it wasn't somebody I was particularly close to, but it was somebody that I could trust to tell me about her other partners and just kind of keep me informed. And I kept going around in my head thinking, well, yes, but I'm limiting what I do elsewhere a little bit, because I feel like I feel compelled to tell other people that I'm going to be with that, yes, I actually do. I'm fluid bonded with more than one person, and I've expanded that a little bit, and that adds to the risk. And honestly, it's felt good over the years to kind of say we are fluid bonded together and with nobody else, and we play with barriers across the board with everybody else. It keeps things simple. It keeps things easy. It takes a lot of I was going to say risk, but I don't mean risk. It takes a lot of uncertainty out of quick interactions. And honestly, if there's something that I treasure as being a swinger, it's being able to communicate a lot of information in a little bit of time, so you get that stuff out of the way and you get to the sexy stuff. And the more that I start talking about my interwoven relationships and half fluid bonded with somebody 3 persons over and all this stuff, it's like, well, shit, now it's just getting a little bit more complicated, and I don't necessarily want to go into that. And all of a sudden I remember why people kind of scoff at the elevator speech if their lives are a little complicated, even though I've tried to disabuse people of that notion. It's like, I understand that there is
you can still do complicated quickly.
You can, but it's a little more scary to the people that you're talking to.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I like being simple.
Well, I was listening to Dan Savage, and he was talking with a guy who was doing a study on the head and throat cancer from HPV, and how now there is a direct cause and effect link between oral HPV and higher occurrence of head and throat cancer, something like 22 times as likely. I mean, it's still a minuscule amount, 100% minuscule amount, and it is the rarest of the HPV strains. But I was amazed that even Dan Savage, when he was talking to this doctor, was suggesting, well, does this mean we should tell people to stop having oral sex if they don't want to get oral HPV and the throat cancer? And I couldn't believe that he wasn't suggesting the possibility of barriers. So I angrily tweeted at him. And he tweeted back that even at the height of the AIDS epidemic, people weren't using oral barriers. And my response to that was, well, yeah, but they still should be told that it would protect them.
Okay, that actually, all right, the doctor, this is something that has confounded me a little bit. You know, we are blessed with a community, a very large and diverse community of sex educators. And what I don't understand is why doctors often, with regular people's experiences with doctors, why that doesn't involve some sort of communication about safer sex practices. You know, doctors tell people all the time how to eat better, how to live better, how to exercise better, how to sleep better. Every single part of their lives, almost every part of their lives except for sexuality. And I don't understand why the communication breaks down there. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think Dylan, you hit it right on the head. I mean, I think the medical community as a whole could do a much better job in this way. I mean, we absolutely have to be out there talking about it, but we don't. And I think the point that Coop brought up before about the human aspect of doctors is the same thing, right? They're people too. They come with their own mental baggage, their own stigmas, their everything else. So in many cases, fortunately or unfortunately, they're very uncomfortable about it as well. So I think we don't get the dialogue that you really should be having. So you're exactly right. And wherever we're comfortable, I think if we can bring it up, it makes it potentially a little bit easier. But you're right. We could do a whole lot better in medicine in doing that.
Do you think it's that unless people are volunteering information about themselves, sex is something the doctors are less likely to bring up because it could invoke an extremely negative reaction in some people?
Yeah, I think it's pretty variable, right? You're going to have a few people, and I think it's the minority that are very comfortable and proactively bring it up to patients. But I think by and large, a primary care physician is screening for a whole lot of things. So part of it is, I think that there's a priority list, and they're trying to get through the check boxes of all the other things they want to screen for. Mm-hmm. And I think there's also that level of embarrassment and discomfort on their part. So yeah, I think if we can bring it up, it helps.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more about STIs. Exciting, no? And how to make it sexy to use barriers. And Shira B. Katz, way back, told us how to give a sexy blowjob, but she might not want to tell us that again. I don't know. She doesn't want to use them. I don't know.
She was patient zero.
I do. I still do. I'm just trying to be a rebel. I'm cool now, you guys.
Oh, hey. and I've gone over to the barrier side, the paranoid side. Really, that's what I've done.
I'm still there with you.
I am one step away from just having the antibacterial stuff next to the bed and just using it interchangeably with lube.
I just imagine your sex looks a lot like the scene of like a scene in Dexter.
Oh yeah. There's plastic everywhere.
We'll be right back with Life on the Swingset the podcast.
2016 is moving fast, and we're getting ever closer to being back in paradise at Desire Resort and Spa in Cancun, Mexico. 2016's trip is from November 5th through 12th. Desire is probably my favorite spot in the whole world, a sex-positive and open place that lets us hang out, get our sexy freak on, whatever form that may take, be it swinger, poly, nudist, or simply curious. Eat, drink, enjoy like the gods of hedonism that we are. For our 5th year, we're taking over the entire resort, and that allows us full control over the entertainment and themes. We're already over half booked, and it's a small resort, so these rooms are going to go fast. We've had a waiting list every year. You don't want to miss your chance. Go to ssdesire.com for more information, to listen to our past podcasts, and read blog posts from previous trips. I can't wait to be back in paradise with you all. ssdesire.com. Choose your own adventure.
We all come to a point in our lives when we finally ask the ever-looming question, is this all there is? And most of us coast along afterwards, just accepting that the answer to that question is probably, yeah, this is it. Sometimes, though, we're lucky. Sometimes we run into the right people at the right time. The young couple at the center of A Life Less Monogamous, the new novel by Cooper S. Beckett, are about to meet a couple of swingers, and this moment will change their lives. Cooper's first novel is already receiving acclaim, and you can pick it up today direct from the author at alifelessmonogamous.com as a signed paperback, DRM-free ebook, or pre-order the audiobook and save 50%. Use promo code SWINGSET at checkout to save 10%. You can also get Cooper's memoir, My Life on the Swingset, Adventures in Swinging and Polyamory, as an ebook, signed paperback, or audiobook at mylifeontheswingset.com. Enjoy more Cooper today, in book form.
Welcome back to Life on the Swingset, the podcast. I don't know how to transition. I never know how to transition to you asking me a question.
Hey, Coop.
Yes.
Got a question for you.
Yes.
All right, so I know that I mean, you talk about being a hypochondriac a lot, and just bear with me here while I say this.
Oh,
Sometimes listening to you talk about all the things that go through your head makes a lot of stuff seem scary, and it makes it kind of seem unsexy, right? And that's not me throwing it at you like,
Are you just saying that I'm unsexy? Because I already know you find me unsexy.
No. It's not that. What I mean is, it's real easy to talk about all the scary shit that goes through our heads, because a lot of us have components of that in our heads, right? But kind of like throwing it at somebody all at once, it's like, oh my god, all this stuff can happen. Well, I'm just gonna swear off sex right now. But I want to know how you got there, because I don't think you've always been a hypochondriac. What put it together for you, and then how do you get around it to still actually have really pleasurable sex?
Well, I have always been a hypochondriac. It just really kicked into gear when we started swinging, and really it wasn't even right at the beginning, because I mean, condom use for penetration, that was a no-brainer. I mean, that was just a thing. But I didn't think much about the other stuff, including I didn't think that there was even transmission ability for oral. And it was only after I really started to, this podcast did it to me. Because in order to speak about it, I felt I should be more knowledgeable about things. And I learned way too much. And then, it was literally, I would go home from a date, and within 6 hours, I would be developing symptoms of something. And seriously, I know that I know that your body can do all sorts of things psychosomatically,
right?
But in me, and really, let's logic this out. So I have sex, my pubic hair maybe gets lube in it, maybe gets mussed up, maybe gets, in those days, pussy juices all over it, gets a little stiff, gets a little hard, gets a little painful, feels like herpes. Couple that with the internet, where everything is either cancer or herpes. I mean, literally every symptom you could possibly have, you can trace it back to cancer or herpes online. I had WebMD taken away from me because I was doing this. So I would feel this stuff. And if I wasn't feeling it, I would have a countdown, because theoretically, about 8 days after exposure is when herpes would show up, if it was going to show up. So whenever I'd feel a little tingle, I'd backtrack, I'd count backwards on the calendar, and back then I was having a lot of sex a lot of the time. So I got to a point, and I'm glad Shira kept pushing me about the condoms thing, because I got to a point where if I did that, it might cut out half the voices. And it did. It hasn't cut out all of them. I still occasionally get into the weird countdown mode. And I still develop symptoms of all sorts of horrible things. But it helped.
How did you, okay, we all kind of need to find a voice of reason there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who is your ultimate voice of reason for when you have these? I don't want to call them little episodes, but let's just say when you start the countdown, when you start to.
Right now, Dr. John probably involuntarily signed up for that position in Mexico. I didn't tell him when we sat down that it might involve that. No, I have a few people in my life who are medically trained in some way, and when I'd really get freaked out, I would ask them. And then my next step would be, Minute Clinic or whatever, the quick sit down and see a doctor thing. But I mean, I'm really lucky to be in a relationship with someone who has had medical training, because she looks at things and says, "No, shut up."
I feel like we need more of that.
It's funny you say that, because we're kindred spirits in some way, right? Too, because I share some of the hypochondriac tendencies as well.
Indeed.
And it's funny being in the profession. You say, well, you should be able to figure this out. But you brought up a great point. I mean, some of the things that you read online, everything you could fit yourself into almost any category.
Yeah.
Right? And then, of course, I can take it just to the next level, because I can then look up and figure out what all the false positives are and the false negatives are, and what are the chances that the test wasn't right. And I can logic myself into panic very quickly. So the internet's a great place, but it's also a very dangerous place, too.
It is.
So it's really interesting you brought that up.
I would like to state that I have been WebMD free for over a year now.
That's impressive.
I will occasionally Google things, but only when I have very specific things. Like I've had recurrent and distressing bouts of prostatitis, but a very benign thing, but very specific symptoms, and that's good to have very specific symptoms, because then Google can help you. But even better is a doctor.
So did you go through that withdrawal on a WebMD 12-step group, or how did you accomplish that?
Well, no, I've Ginger has encouraged me to be mindful, and so I will get to the URL bar and be typing WebMD. And
call your WebMD sponsor?
I ask myself if that's what I really want.
You know, Cooper, yes. There is a technological solution to this. It's called a hosts file. We can erase this shit right off of your computer. Yes, we can make it not exist. It'll come up in search results, but you click it and it'll just go nowhere.
Can it go somewhere else? Can it go to like a video of me saying, "Cooper, calm down. You are the safest person you know. You probably don't have anything."
That is possible. Yes.
And that's like when the doctor gave me Powerball odds of actually having syphilis recently.
Actually, in all seriousness, I would love to get a picture of Shira and Ginger with their disapproval faces on, their arms folded disapproval faces, and just one of the single image sites. It's just a single image. Redirect and leave it at that.
So that's what it redirects to is just them looking at me disapprovingly?
I'm totally willing to pose for that.
Okay, so the other thing that you could do, and something that's really helped me, and actually on previous episodes of pedestrian polyamory,
you forgot the name of your show.
It's been years.
It's been a while.
But on previous episodes, I actually did the math and quantified all the statistics, which really, really helped. But the biggest trick I know to get over the kind of hypochondria is to realize that a lot of these STIs that you're really worried about, the biggest impact to your life that they'll have is social shame.
Right. And
the actual impact to your health and well-being is very, very, very low, statistically speaking. So I think I did the math on both HPV and HSV. And if you look at what actually does of the hundreds of thousands of cases of a lot of these STIs that are popping up every year, we're talking about thousands and tens of thousands, which is very low statistically speaking, of, big bad health impacts such as cancer or things that are life altering, that sort of thing.
Well, and my practices prevent against the actual big bads that I should be reasonably afraid of.
Precisely.
Well, and I would dovetail on the sharing of that, and I'd love to hear the doctor's perspective on this, but the reality is we move about the world and we open doors with doorknobs, and we are human animals, and
we touch all sorts of germs.
We will catch things. We will contract things. And there's a lot to be said about that component of social shame when we're talking about STIs that I really find to be a compelling issue to examine, in the sense of, we don't tell people to not get in cars. We don't tell people, this sounds cliche, but it's where I'm going. We don't tell people to not get in cars. We don't tell people to not use doorknobs. We are human animals. And so I feel like a big part of this process is there is whether it's driven by the medical establishment's collective personal shame, because, we're interacting one-on-one with people and everyone's sexual experience is based in an egocentric way on their own sexual experience. So I appreciate that doctors are humans and they're going to carry with them their own baggage around sex and sexuality. However, as a medical professional, there is a component of this interaction that includes recognizing that as human beings, we're most likely going to become sexually active or be sexually active on a regular basis in our lives. And so there's a lot of normalizing and demoralizing around sexuality that is an important piece of the puzzle that really is asking doctors to go above and beyond the call of duty. Yet I still feel like, gosh, there's such a gateway, to call on the doctor again. You're such a gateway as a professional to people. Well, sure. To people having true, accurate, shame-free information. And I'm quite certain that you pass along that information. You personally pass along that information to your patients. But what I'm coming around to saying is I find it frustrating that the medical establishment as a whole treats, or it feels like the medical establishment continues to treat STIs differently from other stuff we can get, other viruses we can get as human beings. And I just personally, I find them very similar in the sense of, we're all organisms. We are going to contract things. Let's figure out a way to not do that if we don't want to, and to deal with it when we do.
Yeah, no, I think those are really great points. And, one of the things you started off with is that whole risk-benefit thing, right? People, they come in and we talk about, let's say, different medicines, and they've heard the guy who sounds like he's on the FedEx commercial after every drug ad on TV, and he tells you the 12,000 things, your dick will fall off if you take this medicine, right? So everybody's all worried about that. But
well, it might. Well,
that's true, but it's a rare side effect, fortunately. So, but the thing is that the risk benefit is really the discussion that we need to have. We forget every day, to the point you brought up before. You get in the car and you drive somewhere. Even driving to that appointment that day was probably far riskier than some of the things that we do. But you also said that that you feel like they should go above and beyond. And I honestly, I think that it shouldn't be above and beyond. I think physicians need to get more comfortable, and health professionals as a whole need to get much more comfortable being able to discuss these things. I think it's hugely important because that frustration that you brought up about them treating things very differently is real. I think we've gotten a little better with mental health in some small way, not great, but maybe a little bit better in being able to talk about things like depression and anxiety, in some cases a little better than many years ago. And I think sexual health needs to take even more advances in that general direction, because we do need to treat it just like any other disease or infection, and it doesn't happen. And it's really unfortunate, but I really have hope that over time that improves.
And the real tragedy of the last couple years has been all the shutting down of Planned Parenthood, which is a group that actually would give the education and actually would test for the things and give real knowledge to people without the attached shame. And that's as political as I'll get tonight.
Well, I guess, we spend a lot of time trying to destigmatize sex in general, and a lot of people put a lot of work into making it clear that sex is a human right, and sex is something that enjoyable sex is something we all have a right to. And without all that, you still end up with the penalty for being sick is that you're sick, but people have compassion for you. But the penalty for getting an STI is that you're sick, or you're not. But you get that shame no matter what the circumstances, because you shouldn't be having that sex. You don't need sex to live, or you were practicing sex in a way that was not socially acceptable or acceptable to that person or whatever it is.
And then the STI is your punishment.
Yes, exactly, because people feel it's appropriate for you to be punished for actions that you take. And that is across the board and largely across gender in a lot of different ways too.
Why don't we think about, your next case of bronchitis or sinusitis because you didn't wash your hands as a punishment, right? We don't think about it that way. And it's really, I think it's so much as a double standard, right? It's any infection. You could say that there's a cause and effect that we're responsible for in some way. But somehow one is, well, that happens, it's life. And the other one is, ooh, you must be a bad person because you've done something wrong. And it shouldn't be that way. It's really, it's a shame.
Or what about oral herpes that you get through sharing drinks? Why is that not stigmatized?
Or that you get because your aunt kissed you when you were 4.
Right.
Precisely. And I feel like there's extra stigma for the non-monogamous people because we should be monogamous, right? Like this is extra sin on our part, and so we're being extra punished with our STIs.
Extra punished.
Heathens.
Ugh, I know, right?
So last week, Mr. Pent, who's a frequent guest on Dylan's Gentle Pervert Social Club, sent me a message on Hangouts that just said, so the Zika virus is now sexually transmitted.
Oh, God.
Terrified yet? And I was for a moment terrified that now there is a mosquito-borne virus that could just show up and be sick. Because, you're always on the lookout for the next AIDS. If you're me.
They're saying it relates to a birth defect. And I got to tell you, it's not fun to be at that age where you're deciding whether or not you're going to have your last ones when everyone's talking about that birth defect that's going around.
I can imagine.
It's
I just got to add a little snark to this because there's nothing like a virus down from the deep south that scares white people once it starts affecting them for some reason. Just, we're going to lose our shit now that Ebola comes to the shore. All of a sudden it's a national emergency. We have to spend a few $1 billion on it. Or, Zika's going to come. Some of our babies are going to have encephalitis or some other list of terrible symptoms. And now we're going to have to spend a lot of money and fight it. But when it doesn't affect us, it doesn't really matter. Okay.
Well, and the good news that made me not panic is I read the transmission, and it's transmitted basically exactly the same as AIDS. So if you're protecting yourself from HIV, you are protecting yourself from the Zika virus. And I am, so I'm not worried. Although a mosquito can still bite me, so I really should wrap myself in plastic.
That's fantastic.
You already do. Come on.
We're going to take another break, and we'll be back with more Life on the Swingset, the podcast.
We at the Swingset believe that being risk-aware and practicing safer sex makes our lifestyle exponentially better. With that in mind, we're partnering with Lucky Bloke, global condom experts and the best online source for condoms and lube, to say no to mediocre condoms and bring the most pleasurable, safer sex directly to our listeners. Go to swingsetcondoms.com to see a specially curated selection of condoms, lubes, and assortments to reintroduce variety and excitement into the protection portion of your playtime. You should especially take note of the deluxe sampler put together by us at the Swingset for your party and date night kit. Making your condom purchase here supports both us at the Swingset and the wonderful purveyors of safer sex, the Lucky Bloke. swingsetcondoms.com.
When it comes to online dating, we here at the Swingset believe that Cassidy is the best one out there. It looks great, it's intuitive and easy to use, and it's simply full of potential sexy friends. Still the fastest growing online swinger dating site in the world, Cassidy has been our go-to site for the last 3 years. If you sign up using our link at lifeontheswingset.com/KASIDIE, you'll get some free time to explore the site. And you can decide for yourself if Cassidy is the site for you. Hope to see you there at Cassidy.com.
Do you want to talk about blowjobs with barriers when we get back?
I want to go into the whole eroticizing the barriers.
Okay, I can do that.
That should be a pretty smooth segue from Zika virus. So
I think
yeah.
Well, that's why I went to commercial. There is no good segue from Zika virus.
So let's be clear, a couple of things. First and foremost, Zika virus really in the big picture is not a big deal for humans unless you're procreating as a female, if I'm not mistaken, right? The doctor?
Absolutely.
Or are having sex with somebody who is procreating as a female.
No, even, sure.
Because you can transmit it to them.
Please put this in the show, please.
Just saying.
Sure.
Especially if you're trying to get pregnant, that would make it very easy to transmit this. So if your husband comes back from, let's say, Cuba, because it's open now, and wants to get you pregnant because he just got home, then Zika virus.
The information component that isn't being talked about right now is, okay, you get the Zika virus. Does it go away? Does it stick with you? How long can you transmit it to people? We are hearing all sorts of panicky shit about
question.
What it could do, but we don't know what the long-term implications of it. Is it something that the body ends up dealing with and then you become immune to? We don't know. And that would be really helpful public health information to start distributing. And so obviously I'm looking in your general direction, the doctor, but just real quick, if you know, and real quick, in addition to that, I'm having a real hard time sympathizing with people that are panicking over the Zika virus when they go travel, they can accidentally catch something and then they bring it back. Like I have a lot of sympathy for that, but most of the terror happening is not just about people that are pregnant. It's about people that might get pregnant, and that is just rubbing me the wrong fucking way. It's like, oh, so just because you are a potential human bearer, now all of a sudden you have to be super afraid of this virus and start panicking and shit. It's like I understand reasonable preparation. I understand wanting to know everything you know about this, but everybody's just fucking panicking. And if there's any case to be made for rapid distribution of accurate information, this is fucking it.
Absolutely. And this goes back to what we said. It's the bigger picture, right? So pregnant women have so many other risks that are huge compared to Zika that we don't talk about those every day because they seem kind of boring, right? Because everybody talks about other risks during pregnancy all the time, but all of a sudden now there's this new evil thing that can fly into your house in a mosquito, and all of a sudden it can make headlines, right?
A heat-driven missile of disease.
Exactly.
Which is what they've been calling this mosquito.
Well, ultimately, if I'm not going to overstate the case, and I will not go off on a tangent right now, but I will say, yet again, let's put women in charge of their reproductive health and wellness and put them in control of whether or not they procreate. Period. Done. I'm done.
But then they should vaccinate their children, because the same people up in arms over this are also the ones who are not going to vaccinate those children for fear of birth defects. So, yes, let's move on to sexying up safer sex practices.
I'm real good at that. I can do that.
You are. Shira, you want to give us the encapsulated version of your...
Encapsulated.
And in the time...
Encapsulated.
In the time since you talked about how to do that, I have given many a blowjob with a barrier.
Do you use my technique?
I do use your technique.
Isn't it so good?
It is.
It is really good.
So hit our listeners who may not be familiar with your technique.
Okay, so this is specifically about blowjobs on male bodies or penis-bodied humans. Is that right? Did I do it good? Okay.
That works. So this is actually for blowjobs on penises, which really I think is blowjobs. So I think you're set. I think you're covered.
Just making sure. I use blowjobs for. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. We're just going to move on.
Wait, what else? Hold on. No, hold on. What else do you use blowjobs for?
I use
My
the word
strap-on?
blowjobs for when you're talking about going down on my strap-on, or
that counts
actually
as
just
a
going down
penis.
on my pussy. That's a blowjob for
Really?
me.
Yeah, but you don't need to put a condom on my strap on because I'm sterilized.
Unless you want to use your strap-on with multiple people.
Well, unless it's going in someone.
Right. Okay, that's fair. So if I fuck somebody already and Shira wants to go down on my strap on, then I will put a condom on it. Anyway, go on, Shira.
Or if you're about
nice
to and
of
someone
you.
goes down on
You
it.
know
I'm
what?
just
That's
saying.
really sweet. Thank you, Ginger. You're so thoughtful. Thank you. Okay. So here is a really quick 4-step process of giving blowjobs with barriers. And it's super simple. The first step is to use the stigma that is going to be against you in the first place. Because people freak out when they hear, oh, I'm, anything that has anything to do with blowjobs and condoms. People are like, oh, that's pointless. What's the point? Why don't I just, put a condom over my tongue before I eat my food or whatever the fuck it is that they're going to say. And there's a lot of people who feel like it's terrible. And that's because it is potentially terrible if you do it poorly and don't use the Sherby Cat's technique. So use the stigma. People think that the blowjobs with rubbers are pointless. What you're going to do is be like, hey, guess what I can do? And I know you think this is stupid, but it's going to be fucking hot and I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to change your world. And so that's step one. Step one, guess what? I have a trick. Let me show you, which is hot in itself, right? Step 2, pick the right condom. And what you want is one of those condoms that are kind of like looser at the tip and at the shaft than it is at the base. Trojan has a condom called an Ecstasy, which is like perfect for this. And
one has the pleasure dome.
Yes.
That's the one I like.
What a great name.
It is the Pleasure Dome. It is in Xanadu, so it's fair, and Kubla Khan declared it, so, there's
Exactly.
that.
So that's just another one to add to your repertoire. Go on, Shira.
Thank you.
Yes.
So you definitely want the right condom. You're going to be using the stigma. You're so cool for having this thing and you're going to show them what's what. And then the third thing is you have to make sure you're using the right lube. And it's very important to use lube when you're giving a blowjob with a barrier. Because if you, even if you don't have the right lube, use some lube. It's going to make all the difference in the goddamn world.
Yes.
But if you have a choice, you want some of that, really thick, fat, gel. There's, some water-based gels that are really goopy and thick and kind of bubbly and great.
The anal lubes, in fact.
Yeah. Is that what the anal lubes? Aren't they anal lubes?
No, they work awesome for anal, is what I'm saying. The big gel, goopy ones, yeah.
Yeah, so those ones are really great. You want to make sure that's not too cold, of course. If you can, warm it up a little bit before you get it in there, because any big baggy condom full of lube as you're putting it on, that if it's really cold, it's gonna be lame. But you get it on there, and now what you have is a cock, a nice one, hopefully, if you're lucky, and it is covered with a baggy condom that has some nice, thick, fat lube inside of it. And then that's on to step 4, where you actually give the fucking blowjob, which is the best part. And what you want to do here is, because you have the nice, big, baggy condom and you have the thick lube, what you're trying to do is, what you would imagine, what people imagine when they think of condoms and blowjobs is this tight condom on their cock and they're not going to feel anything. But you're fixing that by having a baggy condom with lots of lube, and you're going to be manipulating the condom around their cock as you're giving them a blowjob. You're going up and down, and you're moving it around a lot, and it's providing the friction that would be missing otherwise with just a kind of tight condom, no lube blowjob. And it's amazing. And it's also why the fucking tip of the condom can get stuck behind your uvula. because it's moving around in there. So you have to be careful. But do a good job, and it'll be the most amazing experience your nice friend with a penis on their body has. They'll love it.
If you don't use a really baggy one also, if you don't have one, the one thing that you always do, and if you don't, you should, before you put a condom on, is pinch the tip But with a blowjob, you don't really need to do that because if the cum leaks out the sides, not a big deal. You're not getting anyone pregnant in this instance. So I recommend putting it on tight if you don't have a baggy condom.
Ooh, we have variations on the technique now.
Yeah, indeed.
You guys write in with your own variations, please.
I'm not differing with you. I just have had a slightly different experience. If I have a condom that doesn't have the extra room at top, I do go ahead and pinch it and pull it forward almost an inch. And then I go ahead and pretty much do everything.
Dylan wants to get caught behind their uvula. It's a power game he plays. They consent. I'm not suggesting anything.
Well, I'm saying there's a little bit of a compromise. I admit that if you don't necessarily have the right equipment with you, you just don't give the full-throated, jam it down my throat blowjob, but you still kind of, you can still kind of get the same effect because you still have the room there, right? But at that point, I think you also might want to add, you might want to hold down the condom around the base of someone's cock too, because, there's a little bit worse of a penalty for going a little too deep. But I think you can still do it if you don't have the right equipment.
That is very true. You do want to hold on to the rim of that condom when you're moving because it is so mobile, especially with all that lube. So you do want to hold on to that base.
So I'm curious to hear the doctor's perspective on what he finds sexy about barriers, from whether it's from your personal experience or what you find sexy in terms of options. I don't know. We're talking about oral sex with condoms, but we have lots and lots of other options. What do you find sexy about using barriers? Saran wrap.
No, I mean, I think that, it can absolutely be sexy, and I think it doesn't necessarily always have to ruin the mood. People have this thing like, oh, it's going to be a bad moment if I have to take this out, and it slows things down or kills it. And I think to the point that Shira brought up before, if you have a technique about it, and there's your mojo about it, right? How you put it on, how you use your skill and make that happen to keep your partner aroused, I think can be really, really hot sometimes. And I think if you work it into the whole thing, it can be good. We've always said, sex without a barrier for most people would probably be optimal, but it's not always the case. So being able to use it to your advantage is awesome, and we've had a lot of great times doing that.
I have another question, a follow-up, perhaps. So say you're in a position, well, no pun, really. Say you're in a circumstance where so maybe you play with barriers for a while and you have safer sex and you use condoms and, in whatever capacity you use dams or condoms, and you want to come on someone. Like on someone in a genital space or not on someone's face in an orifice. Like, is that just like a get out of jail free card? Can someone come on my back or come on my chest or somewhere and just be like, oh, that's cool. And then you just like get up and walk away and shower and it's all good. Like from
it depends on what you like, Jen. If you like that kind of thing, sure. No, but
I do like that.
We've heard. But the truth really is, I mean, the risk, from a medical perspective, the risk there is super, super low. So I think you always hate to give a blanket permission, but the likelihood of transmitting anything worthwhile approaches beyond Powerball, Coop. So I think
beyond
the
Powerball,
way beyond Powerball. So I think you should just let it go and have a whole lot of fun.
That sounds awesome. And I'll say from the perspective of putting all of the eroticizing barriers in a bigger perspective, I love the idea of eroticizing barriers, of using dams and condoms and really being mindful of how you engage sexually. And at the same time, allowing for the eroticism of it's really fun and sexy when someone is a gusher, or it's fun and sexy when someone comes on someone's back or on your chest, and being able to allow for that within the constraints of your risk-aware perspective. And it helps to hear those kinds of things. And I agree completely with what you're saying. And, you know, I can imagine only as a doctor that you don't ever give a blanket experience like, yeah, go for it. Come all over her back. It'll be fine. Like, you never really know what's going to happen. But for people who that's a part of your play, that's a really sexy erotic component of what you'd like to enjoy, to know that, hey, that's okay. Like, give that a try if that's within your risk aware, you know, perspective as partners, knowing that it can feel somewhat taboo when you are pretty regularly playing with barriers in any other way. Because I personally find that very, very sexy. And it's fun to consider opportunities for allowing someone to have whatever orgasm they're going to have in a way that's as safe as possible for everyone who's involved, but not let the safety concerns sort of dampen, no pun, the whole experience. So, you know, it's great to go into that knowing what makes sense, what feels right for everyone involved, and be aware of the, you know, do the risk aware thing, but also cut loose a little bit, as Shira shared at the beginning of the podcast.
So I had a question for you guys, actually, something that we haven't used, but has sometimes been intriguing, but sometimes just looks a little cumbersome, is the female condom. Have you guys had experience with that? Good, bad, thoughts?
Ophelia loves it. I think I'm too nervous to use it because I'm always worried about pulling out and going next to it. I spent my entire time, the one time I've used one, thinking about that. What if I pull out too far and go next to it?
I want you to know, Cooper.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of sex with internal condoms, and I've never had that even come close to happening. And you know, accidentally popping out does happen, right?
Right.
But it doesn't automatically like work its way around the edge of the condom, and then you find yourself in without the condom. You end up outside of the condom, on top of other surfaces there, which usually have the condom on it because it spreads out very nicely like a flower on top of the whole surface, right?
Yeah.
And so you don't have that problem with it.
It's a very wide, like, sorry, Dylan, I didn't mean to step on you there, but I mean, it's a very, there's a lot of surface area to the external component of the female condom as compared to a penis condom. So it's really tough to get around like, you'd almost have to like go around and make a left turn or go around and make a right turn to get in there. Like it'd be a task to get.
Cocks do not work that way, is what I'm saying.
They really don't. Right on. They really don't, especially if you're thrusting that way. My only objection, I actually enjoyed, because I don't do it anymore, my experience with female condom, because I was very much in control and it was really enjoyable, except for the fact that they're latex.
Yeah.
And I can't do latex anymore. So that's my only drawback to the female condom.
Hey, Swingset fans, I'm going to break in here for a second because it turns out Ginger and I might have gotten this one wrong. Apparently, FC2, the company that makes almost all female condoms, internal condoms, whatever you want to call them, here in the States and in most of the world, they've been using nitrile, or, you know, non-natural rubber, non-latex, to make all the condoms. I don't know how Ginger and I were under the impression that all internal condoms were made with latex. Maybe it was the slightly confusing packaging on the individually wrapped condoms that state something about latex, even though it doesn't imply that it has or doesn't have latex. It's not quite clear. Anyway, we got it wrong. FC2 female condoms do not have latex. They're all nitrile. And the ones that do have latex are generally distributed in Africa, in Asia, and a little bit in Europe. So, you know, we got it wrong. Our bad. Please continue.
You do have to have a partner who's willing to be like, oh, you're in charge right now? Okay. So we're going to do it that way. But again, the latex has been prohibitive for me.
Can you talk more about that? Like, how are you more in charge?
Ooh, that's a great question. I just find for me, I feel like I'm the one who is, for lack of a better term, wearing the condom. Like, I'm the one. Like,
you hold the access to your pussy.
Exactly. And I'm just like,
awesome.
yep, here you go. And you know what? Like the fuckers are like, oh, nuh-uh. Like, this is crazy. And I'm like, yep, go for it. And it's just, and in the big scheme of things, this is my mentality, which is why I'm a little sad that we don't have a non-latex female condom. And if we do, somebody ping me, because I want a case like Elaine on Seinfeld when she was looking for the sponge. Right.
Sponge-worthy.
Like, you are female condom worthy. If you can find me a non-latex version of the female condom, I feel like the body-to-body contact is more comprehensive than the penis condom. And so, because, if you know how a condom works, when it goes on a penis, it goes up to the body. A female condom has a greater circumference. And for me personally, when I'm thinking body to body connection, contact, things like HPV, HSV, I'm like, I've got a little bit more to work with here. And I just dig it. And the gentlemen with whom I have used them have dug it. So, I don't know how else to say it other than I wish I had a non-latex version. And it does feel good to be the one who's like, hey, I'm going to just take care of this and here, have at it. But I will say it's an unsettling experience for a gentleman who might be between my legs, holding his cock going, wait, what?
Jen, I don't believe there's anyone who's ever been between your legs holding their cock and saying, wait, what? I don't believe it.
I want to sell the internal condom real quick, and in one more way. It front loads some of that sex prep, because you can put that in pretty much at any time, and it avoids the whole, we were talking about potentially unsexy interruptions to kind of get things ready for new sex acts, and I think we've all found ways to make that sexy, but you want to avoid the interruption of trying to get a condom on correctly. You go ahead and use an internal condom, and then you just fire and forget it. And then, 10 minutes later or something, when you're actually ready to have penetrative sex, you go ahead and do it. And you know what? You're ready, she's ready, it's ready, you do it, and then it's done.
When the women I know who use them pretty regularly often will use them to improve period sex.
Yes.
And for partners who have issues with condoms, because there are a lot of, especially newer swingers who haven't had a lot of time using condoms, who now using condoms, it causes them to not stay hard. Whereas an internal condom, they don't have to put anything on that might fit uncomfortably.
I will say that is a really sexy thing to be able to, use, if we're going to, go with the phrase, which I love, the internal condom. I love that, Dylan. I personally am not again, they were latex, although the doctor has very lovely forwarded me a link that I'm going to buy now, the case, the gross, whatever it is, of non-latex internal female condoms.
Somebody buy Ginger a gross.
I know, right? Send them my way. But moral of the story is there's a couple of pieces of that. One is I do think it's very sexy for a gentleman who is in that headspace to maintain his erection and feel like that's super sexy. My opinion is, for me, it's not something I'm going to actually use super early in any kind of interaction. It's not like I'm going to go out on a date wearing the condom. It's just not going to be what I do.
But then you could be ready to go.
I could
DTF be. At any moment, Jen.
I could be, but you know what? I guess I'm not. So there's that. The other piece is I feel like I don't know. I've had experiences a number of times with my natural lubrication that has caused slight issues, i.e. gushing, in the sense of you have to be prepared to be vigilant, just like you would be with a condom that a partner is wearing on his penis. Like you do still have to be vigilant in a particular way. So there is a responsibility involved with utilizing a barrier in a way that is A, sexy, but also B, effective. And so I would just kind of keep that in mind, that using a internal condom is not it's not going to solve all of your life issues. Like, it's definitely something that also needs a bit of vigilance. Even if you're not going to fuck around it, like, there are things that can happen. So just keeping that in mind.
Well, thank you, Doctor, for joining us.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
I wanted to give one thing to our listeners, the one thing that has really changed my oral barriers life, and that is Saran wrap with a cutter, because you peel off a sheet and slice it, and then you have a big, like, I go with like a nice 1.5 by 1.5 that you can lay over the entire area, vulva, anus. You can press it inside the vagina so you can lick everywhere.
And don't get the crinkly stuff.
Which crinkly stuff?
There's crinkly saran wrap, and then there's like smooth.
No, regular clear one. You know, in fact, I have made a link for our listeners. Go to lifeontheswingset.com/wrap, and it will take you right to the Amazon link to the wrap I buy. And
wrap it up.
Because I'm preempting all the people who are going to trot out the old, well, not microwave safe. That's actually not a thing. Just don't get the press and seal. But there's a link that we'll put in the show notes. The name of the video on YouTube is Sex Myth Number 2, The Oral Sex Aficionado. It's by the Sex Mythbusters, 2 really, really adorable doctors who show you why you can trust plastic wrap for oral
I just got to say, press and seal is a really bad idea.
Yeah, you don't want press and seal.
Like, you want to deal with like unfolding folds when you're trying to like go down on your partner? No, you really don't. You want to go down on your partner and not worry about crinkles.
Well, that's why you want the cutter, because if you tear it, then in the moment you've torn it, and now it's that awful like cluster of plastic wrap, and then if you can't handle opening a condom quickly, you're not going to be unclustering saran wrap, and you'll just say fuck it. So that comes with the Cooper endorsement. But as I am not a doctor, I cannot recommend it.
I think you can.
Hey,
pretty good to go.
It is doctor recommended by the doctor.
It is the doctor recommended. Come on.
The pronoun.
So you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theswingset. Check out this podcast, daily blogs, articles, and toy reviews on our website at lifeontheswingset.com and on our site's Twitter feed at ontheswingset. Email us at contact@lifeontheswingset.com. Give us a call, leave us a voicemail, send us a text at 573-55-SWING. That's 573-557-9464. If you have an episode idea for us, please share it with us. Email episodes@lifeontheswingset.com with episode idea in the subject line. Don't forget to buy your condoms from the Lucky Bloke at swingsetcondoms.com. I wonder if Lucky Bloke has those latex-free female condoms. And if not, I bet she'd stock them for you, Jim.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
And Dylan. And for Dylan. But especially for Jim. And you can find our other great podcasts like the Gentle Pervert Social Club, Intellectual Foreplay, The Kinky Geeks, Eat the Rudecast, a damn good podcast about Twin Peaks, Sex at a Go-Go, and Tell Me Something Good at swingset.fm. We are still in a holding pattern on the app. I've had a bunch of people ask about it. I'm sorry. Google is mysteriously prudish. I don't know what to tell you.
Keep pushing.
But the Google podcasts may be going live. They may be live right now. So maybe it's even easier. I don't know.
Also, Spotify podcast may be going live soon. Who knows? It's a mystery.
One day, these big companies will get off their asses and actually open the podcast.
Actually, in the meantime, I want to make a really quick recommendation since we're talking about lament about podcast apps, all right?
I have a good one, too.
Cool.
You hit.
I started using one called Pocket Casts.
Hey, that's mine, too.
All right, good. It has an iOS app. It has an Android app. It has a website that you can use to access all your podcasts, too. And the thing is, it doesn't use cloud storage, so for those of you that know what that is, don't worry. But here's what it does do. It saves, you do have to pay for it. You have to pay for each variant of it, right? So, like, I have Android devices, I have iOS devices, and I have web browsers. So I have paid for it 3 times. However, this is the killer part of it. It saves my fucking progress everywhere.
Yes.
If I add a podcast on one device, it shows up on another device. If I start playing that podcast on that device, it saves the progress. And if I start playing it on the web, it resumes at the exact same place. It has been wonderful. I have been losing track of way less podcasts. I've been able to listen to more podcasts because, for fuck's sake, I actually have one set of information everywhere. It's like it's 2011 all over.
Dylan, do you listen to your podcast at high speed?
That's an option. I edit the podcast at high speed. I don't listen to my podcasts at high speed. I'm not sure why. Maybe I should do that.
I've worked my way up. You can't just start at like 1.5 speed. You have to start at 1.1 and then 1.2 because otherwise you just lose your mind. But that and removing silence have taken like a quarter out of every podcast I listen to. It's fantastic.
Oh shit, I haven't even tried that.
Yeah, check it out. Huh. And they're just turn it on in the app. So I also heartily recommend Pocket Casts, and we don't even have affiliate links, though we should. But we don't. So clearly we just like the app.
Yeah, we should get on them. Hey, we have like marketing people and shit now. We should ask them to go and hit up Pocket Casts for affiliate links.
Delegate. We should delegate.
Oh, I thought you said Dollargate.
Yes, I said Dollargate. We should Dollargate. Did you
Somebody
collapse
just fell
over there?
In their chair.
I'm sorry, that was my stuff. It's still not set up quite right.
Well, finally, you can buy my novel, A Life Less Monogamous, at alifelessmonogamous.com, or my memoir, My Life on the Swingset, Adventures in Swinging and Polyamory, at mylifeontheswingset.com. Both are available as ebook, paperback, or audiobook, and if you buy them from my sites, use promo code SWINGSET to save 10% at checkout. So thank you so much, Doctor. And thank you, Shira, for returning.
Thank you guys. This was great.
I'm so happy to be back.
I just had you. We had to have you back to tell that blowjob story. I mean, really, it wasn't even planned. But when I realized that these two things were coming together, really the only more perfect way to have you back would be to talk about finger cots and anal play.
Oh, yeah.
Way back from your first episode.
Next time, darling.
Well, I'm very
Shira B.
grateful
Katz.
for having... It is. It's Shira B. Katz. I'm grateful for having the doctor and Shira coming at the same time.
Seems we like to come with Shira.
Indeed.
I do love to come. I love to come so much.
And it's a shame Prof wasn't here to talk about her flower.
Jesus, I die. I can't handle Prof. He's so much.
He's
Especially
intense.
right now, because he just gets better over time.
He does, like a fine wine.
Yeah, it's true.
Hey, Shira.
Miss Prof.
I had made out with Prof a whole lot.
I need
What?
pictures.
I thought you'd like that.
Pictures is proof. I don't believe you. No one believes you,
Citation
Cooper. Post
needed.
pictures.
So I believe you, A, and B, I've never seen such a thing. So
it was bizarre. You were always gone.
I know.
Like, it was bizarre because like she was either gone, which happened a lot. Like she would be right there, and then we'd make out, and we look over, and she's just gone, or. We were actually literally talking about, hey, we should make out and see what Jin says. And we see her looking at us, and we make out and look over, and she's having a conversation with someone else. It's like no matter what I don't know if there was some like invisibility shield like the Predator, but she just could not see it. And then then another friend from California and I both made out with Prop at the same time. Jen missed that too. It was weird.
I've never seen any of the things, but, you know, it lives large in my fantasy world, so, you know, it's all good.
It feels like the universe is just trying to make that happen more frequently.
Well, we have to keep trying. At this point, really, now it's like we need to study the phenomenon.
It's the original Shira B boy kissing.
It is.
No, it's the original sin.
Well, I should end our outro by saying thanks for swinging by.
Beauty. Nicely done.
Have a sexy business? Love the Swingset? Let's put these two great things together. The Swingset Network has advertising and sponsorship packages available for our websites and podcasts. Email advertising@lifeontheswingset.com for more information. Thanks.
Follow me on Twitter at FakeDanSavage. And speaking of Twitter, Cooper S. Beckett tweets, when talking about oral sex and cancer risks, Dan, why not talk about oral barriers? Perhaps I should have mentioned when we had that conversation about head cancers and oral sex that you have the option of using dental dams and condoms for oral. I would point out, though, that during the worst years of the HIV/AIDS epidemic, when people were dropping dead and dropping dead quickly, we couldn't get anybody to use latex barriers for oral sex. And it's worth a mention, so Cooper S. Beckett, thank you for that suggestion. Cooper S. Beckett, of course, is the author of My Life on the Swingset, Adventures in Swinging and Polyamory, and he has a new book out, A Life Less Monogamous. Go to alifelessmonogamous.com to check it out. Hey, this is Dan Savage from the Savage Lovecast and Savage Love, and you're listening to a Swingset podcast at Swingset.